Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Hines for Encounters USA. We are your one-stop podcast and YouTube channel for all things alien, Bigfoot, and Dogman. So relax, kick up your feet, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Encounters USA. I have an amazing guest on my podcast today, and he is standing by right now. And unfortunately, I'm going to tell you this right now. We actually started recording or not recording the podcast. We started, and it's one of these glitches, but I have this checklist that I always use. Forgot to press record. So we're actually going to go back over a little bit of the information that we've done, but let me just tell you a little bit about Gary, and I'm going to read you directly from his website. And I think that you are going to be as fascinated as I was when I was approached by Gary on Twitter and said, yeah, let me come on and talk about the information that I have. Now, I know that Encounters USA deals with aliens, Bigfoot, and Dogman, but today we're going to be looking into the realm of something that might relate to or might not relate to these phenomenon. So let me talk a little bit or tell you a little bit about Gary before we bring him on the show. So from Gary's website, and this is from We Are Not Alone, GaryArnold.com. There's a longer website address that I'll leave in the remarks, but this is from We Are Not Alone, Gary Arnold. And basically it's this. Oxford, Pennsylvania filmmaker Gary Arnold describes his trailblazing, I have something wrong with my ability to speak today, describes his trailblazing documentary, Subterranean Séance, The Evidence Speaks, as only the first installment of his ongoing and groundbreaking investigation into the perplexingly strange fringe subject called the electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP. Using just a $5 old Tracfone's digital recorder, Arnold convincingly demonstrates his mind-bogglingly bizarre interactions with disembodied whispers. These peculiar whispers defy any rational explanation. Awesome. All right, Gary. Well, welcome to Encounters USA.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's get a little bit of a background on Gary Arnold. Could you just give us a little bit about you professionally and how you got interested into this kind of phenomenon?
Sure. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania, Oxford, Pennsylvania. Happily married, father of two teenagers. So I've worked in academia for over 10 years now at the local HBCU, and that is where the phenomenon started. In 2017, I'd usually go, a little background, I go during my lunch break over to the university library to do some free reading. Well, the students had already gone home for Christmas break, and I went over to do some free reading. I was going to basically reread Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I got this intensely strange ear-ringing sound in only my right ear when I was reading this. And I thought, how unusual is that? And I had this old school Tracfone on me because my wife said she still wanted me to be available. She needed me, so I have this Tracfone just so she could call me or something. But anyhow, I thought, oh, this has a digital voice recorder on it. Perhaps it'll capture this really strange signal. So I push record, and then on playback, I hear, and then understand no one's there in the library, no one at all on the floor. I hear my name, Mr. Arnold, from the ether. And I was completely floored. thought, okay, somebody's pranking me. There's got to be a joke. Something's going on, but no one was there. And I left that day totally mystified. And I returned the next day because curiosity got the best of me. And the same sound, I can't describe it as anything. It's beyond ear ringing. It has a coded element to it. Same sound recurred. I pushed record, and this time I asked a question. The first question that popped into my head, I said, "Is there anyone here?" Upon playback, there's a voice, a whispered voice that says, "Yes, people." Okay, so now I'm really concerned, and this becomes a routine. My curiosity: can I continue to record these strange disembodied voices? And was it specific to a location? Eventually, after about bring up to speed, I started researching this, and I was never a believer in hocus pocus or anything, but this became, there's a personal component to it where they knew my family's names, they knew my background. They would interact with me and answer questions, and they tell me, and they still do, that they are alien, yes, alien, and otherworldly. So in their own words, now I said, "Why do you speak English?" I mean, and the answer is, "You understand English," which makes sense. I mean, I don't understand Mandarin. So it's a crazy phenomenon, and it's been ongoing for the last over 3 years now. And it's daily. I mean, I interact with these ethereal entities who claim to be otherworldly, who also do some remote viewing, and they have access to information that I don't. I mean, like, I've had other people ask questions that I can't know the answer to, and then they answer correctly. I send the clip to the investigator in Canada, and it's mind blowing how, whatever they are, again, I'm taking them at their word, but they're very mischievous. All right, they will they have a strange sense of humor, and quite often, I mean, I don't. It's mind blowing. This whole experience is mind blowing. But believe me, when this first started, I went to see my family physician. I had detailed MRIs, contrast MRIs. I had comprehensive, full spectrum blood work, everything to get to the bottom of it. See a psychiatrist, everything, and I've never been healthier. It's the strangest thing. So I've had physicians, my family doctors say, "Hey, it's a gift from God." And I'm like, "Can I re-gift it? Because it's a little weird." Right. And so that's where I am on this. And I made a documentary, 29 minutes long. The documentary is part of my investigations. And what I do is, there's so much open source technology online that you can analyze these clips, these whispers. All you have to do is use the computer software, and you can amplify the whispers to where everyone can hear them. All right. And you can have independent computer software actually. Are you familiar with Google Voice, where they'll transcribe a message if somebody leaves you a phone message? Well, they have computer software that will transcribe what it's hearing in these clips. So it can be independently verified that, hey, it's not just me hearing this, and it's not just people, but the computer software is registering. This is some kind of communication, because I've had it analyzed by a couple other professionals forensically, and these are genuine clips and interactions, and I have literally over 1,000 of them now, and it's ongoing. And I'm trying to, like I said, understand their realm, because where they are, they say they don't eat. There is no age distinction, but they also say they're alien and otherworldly, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy stuff.
Okay, so Gary, we talked a little bit earlier, and you're a writing teacher?
Yeah, I'm an academic support specialist, but in particular, I handle the writing and reading center, in an academic support capacity.
Okay, so what I'm looking for right now is, what are they, and what I'm building up to is, you're familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I'm looking, because you're really describing something that really sounds like something that was kind of going on there. And
Mm-hmm.
what's the context? First of all, my first question was, are they speaking English?
Yes.
And so yes, they're speaking English. in every communication?
Correct.
Okay. And is there a history in that location
No,
of
no, I've actually looked into that. No, and there hasn't been any hauntings or anything like that.
but what about native, I mean, native white interaction, maybe native interaction, something violent happened?
nothing right there. I mean, this is a
Okay.
relatively new university library. The actual ground it was built on was just farmland. Now, again, I can't go back 1,000, 1,500 years and say
Yeah.
something didn't happen in that spot.
Mhm.
But there are so many different voices, these entities, and I call them ethereal entities. They want to be known. They're actually they insert themselves in any kind of conversation, like something that a person would say, well, that's ridiculous. I also raise exotic pigeons, right? I import pigeons from all over the world. Just ever since I've been a kid, I've been into pigeons, but I'm really into colorful pigeons, like tropical pigeons. And then I have these white homing pigeons. So I got the ear ringing, and when the ear ringing happens, I can ask a question. And the strangest thing, 99%, that's just 95% of the time, they will, upon playback, you will hear the answer before I ask the question. So in this situation, back in June, I had too many white homing pigeons, so I wanted to get rid of a pair of them. And I said, I'm going to ask them about this. Help me make my decision. And I said it, and then at the playback at the beginning, you have loud and clear a Class A EVP that could be interpreted by almost anyone to say what it's a consensus that that's what it's saying. You have a voice come on and say, sell them, all right? And again, it's the most mundane, silly things. They will insert themselves in discussions of flatulence. I'm not kidding here. This is absolutely bonkers. So there's a warped sense of humor that they exhibit. And I have asked, why are you dealing with me?
Mhm.
And they're very manipulative. They say, you're our favorite. What does that mean? I mean, again, it's absolutely crazy stuff. So I don't know why really that they interact with me, but we had a rabbit that died a few years ago, right? And I will ask him, okay, so what's the name of our rabbit that's passed? Upon playback, and I can send you these clips independently. And again, you can take these clips and analyze it, have a professional analyze them. They're going to say, hey, we don't understand what's happening here, but they're legit. And the vocalizations that these entities make are not made with a human larynx. You can actually do a wave analysis to show human speech versus this is something totally different. The way they formulate their phoneme by phoneme, unit of vocalization is different than we do. So it's absolutely crazy. But the name of the rabbit was Cuddles. So you have the playback, and almost always when it refers to an animal, again, this is really warped stuff, they will use a voice that is almost a comical or caricature of what we'd expect an animal to sound like. If they're referring to a frog, the voice will sound like a frog.
Wow.
If they're referring to a rabbit, they'll sound like it sounds crazy. But again, this is all time-stamped, ironclad evidence that I have. These recordings will withstand any scientific scrutiny as legit. That doesn't mean that we understand why they're doing this, or I've tried to learn about their realm and where they exist. They seem to be otherworldly, but at the same time, they sometimes imply that they're other dimensional. So it's crazy.
Well, I would think that that's kind of a given. So you mentioned remote viewing. Who's doing the remote viewing? When a few minutes ago, you
Yeah,
mentioned
I've had I don't know if you're familiar with Deep Prasad.
Mhm.
He's an entrepreneur, Canadian entrepreneur, and he has people and his employee associates that that investigate things like this because he's an experiencer. He had an encounter with aliens. All right,
Mhm.
that there's no other way. Stereotypical, the gray alien.
Mhm.
And so some people are already they have the scientific expertise that I don't to do analysis. So that's who I enlist to help. is people who have that expertise. Again, I'm in the English writing thing. I don't really have the science background. I don't have those credentials, so I rely on other people. My experience is what it is, and I say, okay, I'll send you this. So if we're going to do a remote viewing test, like there's a purple can or a blue can next to somebody's desk, and the person puts something in there. So I have the entity. I say, okay, this is next to this person's desk. What's in the can? The entity will respond again before my question. If you listen to playback, a battery, which is the right answer. It's mind blowing. I don't know how to frame this except that it's so absurd. I've actually had you familiar with Robert Bigelow's organization?
Yes.
Yes. So some of his associates, his inner circle, I've been sending them. They've actually had me do. They were looking for somebody over the summer, and they had me do a remote viewing session to find this person. And I sent them the results, which I didn't understand. And the results were that this person was next to some place that had salt lakes. All right. And I thought it was Salt Lake City, but apparently this was what they were looking for. They went with it. And again, I did this totally pro bono. I just wanted to prove, hey, I don't consider myself a medium or anything like that. I'm an experiencer, but if I can help other people, maybe find somebody, but apparently that was what they were looking for. And so I've been in contact with them as recently as this morning with the different things I'm working with.
This is so fascinating. I told you I'd only do like 30 or 40 minutes, but
Right.
I might have to try to squeeze a little bit more out of you, because this is really the track I've been on for some time now. Because I do think that the alien Bigfoot dogman thing and Skinwalker Ranch is all related to somebody in another dimension that somehow is getting through. And all right, so there's a lot. What's that?
Yeah, I actually do have correspondence with Brandon Fugel, who owns Skinwalker Ranch now. So I'm not unknown to some of these people. Again, just to what capacity I can help, for full disclosure, because I believe that I'm absolutely convinced we are not alone. That a lot of these entities are alien, what we consider that, and they're just not perceived by us because maybe they're out of phase or something in dimensional, or maybe it's part of a camouflage. I don't know all the particulars, but I am and I can independently, if you want some contact information, I can supply that to you to verify my account. It is again so crazy, and that's why if you go to that website, you can get some of the. I'm gaining more and more a higher profile in this stuff. I've had newspapers report on me and all kinds. It's just crazy stuff. But again, we're not alone, and that's it. That's the conclusion. And I think I have evidence that will withstand broad spectrum, full spectrum scientific scrutiny. You can analyze an audio clip, waveform by waveform, forensically with computer software to in a court of law, it would be accepted as, okay, this is legitimate, this is authentic, this is not a counterfeit, this is not something like, you do the same thing with pictures, pixel by pixel, you can analyze a picture, see if it's whether it's photoshopped or not. So it's the same thing here. It is crazy, and it's true.
No, I'm really doing the best I can not to jump from thing to thing.
I hear you.
Let's stay on the remote viewing and
Sure.
Bigelow for a second. I interviewed Kyle Gibson and Mantra a few weeks ago, and they had just been down to Skinwalker Ranch, and they said that there was an area on Skinwalker Ranch. I guess it's below that butte, and that guys are guarding it with guns.
Wow.
And so that's a question I have. What's going on there? And if you are in contact with that guy, that would be interesting to know as to what they're guarding. But just to reiterate,
Sure.
in case people don't know the story, whatever is at Skinwalker Ranch has a mischievous, almost like a pre-adolescent sense of humor, and
Right.
really likes to mess with people. And I'm just going to use the example of their prize bulls that they had just mentioned before they left the ranch. I hope nothing happens to those because we'll be ruined, right? And then the bulls were locked in a impossible situation of one of the trailers, or how did they get in there? It was locked from the outside, and et cetera, and they didn't fit in there. And these are huge bulls that are very hard to handle, and they're just sitting in this place, just waiting for somebody to let them out. And so, how much of you, Gary, is triggering this, do you think?
I mean, I think there's a personal component to it. I believe that the beings are telepathic to start with, because I've done some tests. I also believe that they are tricksters. Mischievous is the word I use. At times, even vulgar. I've had some entities that are, that are profane, that will even challenge. One, I was saying something about the Lord's Prayer because I was testing whether maybe this was an evil entity. The entity answered Jesus in a mocking way, and I have all that recorded. And so, but they're not all that way. I don't want people to just think, oh, these are demonic, or because a lot of times what people would consider angelic or demonic, good or bad. Historically, I think today we would consider it just maybe a certain alien or whatever you want to say is more mischievous or more nasty than another. Some are benevolent, some are helpers, and I've encountered some of those. But I think there's definitely what would be considered a spiritual component to all of it, to all the phenomenon, and that's the thing that I think. Skinwalker Ranch is a laboratory. Something's going on there. I agree with you.
So are you a spiritual person?
I am. I'm raised a Christian. I was, again, abstractly believe in God, but now I much more concretely believe that there is some sovereign in the universe, whether that's an energy or whatever you want to call it. There's something wonderful on one hand, but at the same time, in this existence, we have things that are not so wonderful, and that's up to the individual. It's a personal experience. I think some of these beings would be considered angelic, and some of them maybe even demonic in a historical context. But we use a different word today. That's alien or otherworldly. You could say maybe celestial. Maybe that's the compromise. A lot of language. I've tried to get to, because these beings say they don't eat, like I said. They say that they don't have age like we do. I've asked them about, one of the questions I asked about, not only do they say that I'm their favorite, which I thought was manipulative, because sometimes you have a voice that will claim to be God. And it sounds like as far from God as is like a little flea claiming to be God. It's ridiculous. There's a voice. I have a recording where it says, I'm God. And I think that it's just a joke. I think that's a sense of humor that maybe that's something that we can build on. We can share between our species or whatever you want to call them. There's an appreciation for humor. So it's outlandish. My story's outlandish. It's crazy. And a few years ago, somebody said that, hey, you're going to be going on record saying that you are interacting with ethereal entities who claim to be this and that. I would have thought that is the most stupid thing. It's far from my thinking, and yet here I am, and I'm dealing with something that is profoundly disturbing on one hand because it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, well, have these entities interacted, whispered in the ears of people, leaders, humanity throughout history, and maybe influenced decisions, maybe not for the betterment of mankind. Maybe some of them have helped people make decisions to go to war or something bad. So I don't know. I mean, it opens up a whole can of worms, and you get one supposed answer to a question and you get a lot more questions instead.
Mhm. Well, that was the answer to one of my questions. Is it one? Are we talking about one guy, or so there's many?
There are many. There, I have one who calls me daddy. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, it's one of the clearest ones. I've actually had this analyzed by the Monroe Institute. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. This is consciousness studies. And it's so clear. The person said, it's so clear that you have to worry that people think that this is a fake because it's too perfect. And I said, yes. I said, this little boy's voice, it's always a little boy's calls me daddy. I said, it, you know, I said, it's always the same. And the message is always kind of like, hey, you're my dad. And I'm like, really? Okay. No. And I think that, again, perhaps these are all expressed. No, not just boy or masculine. I have female recordings too. My wife comes from what used to be East Germany. Her name's Ancha. All right. An unusual name. I have voices clear as day, male and female, saying her name, including the German inflection of it. I can send you that. Again, I believe in transparency. I'm not trying to get rich or anything. I have a little documentary. If you want to contribute, I'm $2.99 to watch it. Great. But the idea is, I believe what I've discovered is paradigm changing and epic. And if I want to be remembered by history, hey, it's helping bring full disclosure that, number one, we're not alone. But perhaps there's something of an adversarial relationship with these beings too. Maybe some of them have influenced our development, and that needs to be taken into consideration. What do you do to protect yourself from something that's unseen like that? It opens a lot of questions. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. Every time you say one sentence, I have 10 more questions.
I'm sure.
So let's go. Okay, so you're talking to multiple entities. Can you
Yes.
dial up? Can you say I want to speak to a certain person, or how do they show up?
I think it depends. Each particular voice has a particular message it will deliver. So if it's a being that has something supportive and beneficial and uplifting to say, it's always the same voice.
Mhm.
If it's a being that's talking about their realm, it talks about the others, almost like it is watching them. Almost they they are separate from it. So he'll say they don't do that. Like it's referring to the rest of them don't eat here. The rest of them, we don't have sunshine or we don't have cloudy days. Um, uh, and I asked one of the questions, and the answer was they will all be dead, that's one of the clips in the documentary. If you want to take a look at that, you're able to see that I have it analyzed. The being answers me that they want, and I'm saying, well, you're not telling me anything new because everyone dies from our realm, at least. So why is it that you're saying they're all going to be dead? Again, there's a certain element that's cryptic, right? Almost like they want you to think. They're encouraging that kind of participation. They don't want you just to have an answer straight up. The pigeon thing and flatulence stuff. I mean, I have one, and this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but I have one where I was getting ready to have a session. That's what I call them, right? And I was gassy, and I released one, and the entity comes on in a laughing way and says, "He let us stinker."
Wow.
You can't make this stuff up. It's beyond the pale. It's so far out there, but what it also tells me is there's a sense of humor here. It reinforces, as much as some of it's very dark and deals with death, perhaps, and otherworldliness, and there's also a sense of they're interested in what we're doing. Now, the pandemic is ongoing. The pandemic, I asked them, okay, who in my family, if I'm your favorite, who in my immediate family is most at risk, all right, from COVID? A voice comes on and says, your father. All right, at the beginning again, before my question. It's true. My dad is suffering from cancer. His age, he's 78. So he falls in that category. He's most at risk. That's a given. But we were also, we were waiting in a food line, right? Because they were giving out some food. I was there with the kids. Ear ringing happens. I push record, and a voice is heard upon playback saying, they don't use the food. And I'm like, okay. So I went to my wife. I'm like, this is, charity food. Is there something we're not eating here? Is there something we're throwing away? Because I'm being critiqued. We are, as a family, that we're not using something. And so we had been giving some of the rice away, and we weren't sure what. I don't know. But again, whatever they are, they're inserting themselves in our everyday experiences to the degree it's almost like they're watching us constantly. Maybe we're entertainment. Maybe they are guardian angels. Maybe, again, it is such a huge category of questions, and I'm unable to get absolute clarity because some of the voices are mischievous. So they'll tell you things, right? Including, I have one recording, and I ask, and it's all time stamped. I was worried when I shared it, and I had to delete it on purpose afterwards. I asked them about the election, right, the past election. Now, in advance, right, this was 18 months before the election. My wife's in the library with me on campus, and they say, makes it hell for voting. There's a voice that comes on. This urgent, all right? So we didn't know the pandemic was going to happen 18 months ago. Yeah. And then closer to the election in September, and I, of course, asked the question that's on everybody's mind at the time, who is going to win the U.S. presidential election? And I can share this with you too, and you can have it analyzed. At the beginning of the clip, clearly, Donald Trump. Now, that didn't turn out, did it? All right? So, or maybe it did, maybe something happened, but that mischievous quality, it's like, okay, so if you're wrong about this, or maybe you aren't, maybe this is just, I don't know again how to interpret all of it, but this clip, clear as day, and it got some exposure. People were like, well, what good are they? And I said, number one, I said, what I'm trying to say here, I am not bringing anything more to the table than that they exist. That's mind-blowing enough. As far as interpretation of their messages, accuracy, whether they're playing games with it, that's a whole separate category. I'm not going to touch that. I said, but the fact that they exist should, again, this is historic. This is what we've got to focus on. Why are these, according to science, these voices should not be there? And I've proposed to some scientific investigators, put me in a Faraday cage where electromagnetic signals can't get in or out. It can't be something that's errant radio signal bouncing down in the atmosphere. According to science as we understand it, in a Faraday cage, I can't get these transmissions and these interactions. But I know I can, and I've said, hey, I will challenge someone. Put me in there, test it. Use the computer software that's readily available now to objectively and independently analyze these messages from the ether that should not be there. But as far as accuracy goes, as far as are they telling us the truth? Sometimes they are, like the remote viewing. Sometimes I think they're playing games. And again, the whole idea that some entity, little boy's voice is calling me daddy. I'm like, okay, obviously you're playing a game here.
Yeah.
But what's the goal? Who knows?
Gary, as a writer, I have to go back because I work with words, and yep. I want to just go back to your when you're talking about you passed gas, and is this what the entity said? Stinker? Is that what they said? Stinker?
A voice comes on upon playback and says, right. He, in a strange comic way, he let a stinker.
Right, but right? Do you use that? Who says stinker?
The entity.
You don't, right?
I don't. I never say.
And I used to say that when I was, 7, 8 years old. Who cut the cheese? Who
yes, yeah.
Look, but what I'm getting at is, could we really be? I mean, this is kind of a clue to something as to what kind of language they're using, because that really dates you back to like the 70s.
It does,
Right?
doesn't it? You're right. And that's the thing. I am convinced from some of the experiments I've done, and I've done experiments that other people have suggested, like that they are telepathic. But I've ordered and used the same make and model of phone, certain meters apart. I've used smartphones, more contemporary, high-end Apple products. The newer stuff, the newer smartphones will not capture these interactions. And because I've been told by these researchers, newer phones use filtering algorithms that take out the white noise. That little bit of white noise is essential to record whatever these interactions are. So these EVPs are, what I've been told is they're taking that ambient white noise and they're able to craft what is then seen as or heard as intelligible speech, and they'll do it in live time. This isn't something, I mean, I could ask a question and get it, now that's one of the things I said with the scientist. I said, put me in the Faraday cage where, number one, we know that it can't be random electronic signals and radiation, saying from satellites or whatever, and also live stream the events. So in real time, you will have these interactions to go on record, and then have these computer programs analyze the clips. All of this is the cutting edge of, hey, the technology today allows us to do this. Where 50, 60, 100 years ago with the beginning of the EVP, the idea of interaction, there were limitations. The technology wasn't there, but today we have it. We can conclusively and convincingly demonstrate these sentient voices are here. They should not be here according to our understanding of science. They're saying things that are outrageous, including that they're alien and otherworldly. I have one, when I was getting all the appointments with the doctors and stuff, because I was worried that, hey, I'm cracking up, and any normal person would say that's not normal. And I actually have the being, it comes on and says, get the blood work. I played that for the doctor, and this doctor pulled me aside and he said, again, I believe God has told me that you have a gift. And I made a joke out of it. I said, well, I'm not sure I want this kind of gift. I'd much rather re-gift it if somebody out there really would like to have this kind of distraction in their life. But sometimes you have to embrace things that, you don't want to be true, and they're true anyway. And then you have to work with it. All I'm bringing to the table again and again is these voices are here. You could independently verify that. But as far as interpretation goes, hey, I think they have a sense of humor. Yeah. I think some of them are, playing games. Yeah. And I think others seem to be uplifting and supportive. It's crazy. It's fundamentally crazy. But it is paradigm changing. If we can conclusively show and demonstrate that we're not alone, then one of life's big questions has been answered. All right, because the one is there life after death? And if we can say, okay, well, hey, now we know at least we're not alone, doesn't mean that they're not like cosmic comedians and making, this is their way of interacting with us by making jokes, or intergalactic tricksters. But yeah, so I've been sharing my stuff. Again, I think that it's important for the truth to be known by everybody. The truth should never be something that only a few people are privileged enough to have. It should be, if this is true, I want to share it with the whole world, full transparency.
Yeah. So let's go to this Trump thing, because yes, again, we're talking about, we're looking at language.
Yes.
Stinker is a really dated phrase. Mm-hmm. Trump, you asked the question, who will win the election? You didn't ask who was going to be president.
You asked, I said, who? I'll quote it directly. It said, who will win the U.S. presidential election of 2020?
Right.
When I played the clip back, before I asked the question, as seems customary, they like to answer the question, mm-hmm, and they must be reading my mind, or however their time must not be what we understand it to be.
Yeah.
They say Donald Trump. A voice comes on and says Donald Trump, then my question. So that's who they say. Again, in hindsight, 2020, well, he didn't win, or he did, maybe he did, maybe there's some snafu. I don't know. I'm not trying to, come down on either side. I'm just saying, well, right now we have President Biden.
Yeah.
But
And I'm just saying that they're not wrong.
yeah,
I think everybody in the world doesn't believe Joe Biden is really the president.
and it's
I mean,
right.
or
Yeah,
won the election anyway. Nobody believes that.
yes, and I actually received some hate for for a while. I had the video; it was public. I was
Uh-huh.
trying to promote before the election that this is what the ethereal entities are saying. All
Yeah.
right, and uh, I got a lot of flack for that, and I made it private. I mean, the video is still there. I can share with you privately, but it just I am not into this for the political
Yeah.
gamesmanship. I'm in it because I think this is something that is important that people understand. Hey, we have something here that doesn't make any sense according to regular science or understanding. So we need to get to the bottom of it. It's that important. It's imperative because there could be an adversarial component to it. There could also be a positive that, hey, think Robin Williams as Mork from Mork. Now I'm dating myself. That they're intergalactic or cosmic comedians, that they have a sense of humor, and that they find us interesting enough to even interact with us on the most mundane level, like like I said about my pigeons and flatulence, and whether we're going to eat some food that we receive from a food bank. It's mind blowing. I keep using that word. I don't know. I can say mind boggling, mind blowing, mind melting. I don't know what to do with it. It just all I know is that it is. On one hand, it is so disturbing, but on the other hand, it's uplifting to think, okay, well, hey, here I'm convinced. I'm convinced for whatever reason that this is real, and that they chose me because I didn't choose them to, tell people about it.
Well, so you talked a little bit about this, but I'm surprised you've had any media coverage whatsoever on this.
Mm,
But you have.
yeah, yeah, I have,
Amazing.
and including national coverage.
Mhm.
Uh, we we just it was October 26th, and I was scheduled. There's a challenge. CFI, the Center for Inquiry, has a worldwide challenge. If you can prove you have a paranormal ability, uh, they will pay you $250,000.
Mhm.
So I was scheduled for that, but we had a big bunch of arguing going on because I thought the test they wanted me just to do playing cards remotely,
Mhm.
that I had to get 8 out of 10 playing cards correct, and I thought I said this is something that we should elevate and use a Faraday cage and use the computer programs, and it can be independently vetted so that those programs everybody agrees to are independent and objective. But my family suffered a house fire on October 26th,
Mm.
and we were made homeless, not street homeless, but homeless enough that we had to rely on charities, the Red Cross. This is all independently verifiable information, and local charities. My employer here, everybody will vouch that happened. So that became first and foremost the priority to get us, because we were split. We had to stay at different places. So I could not go through with the challenge. But a national article came out that basically said that I bailed on them, even though I told them, hey, and I have the email correspondence, and we have a family crisis. We're going through, an existential crisis that we can't be just on the street homeless, or we have to deal with the electric company that was the cause of the fire, and then their lawyers were circling the wagon saying they're not going to pay for the damages, and it ended up being 15 weeks that we were homeless.
Mm.
But this is never mentioned in the article. So the article explains my experience, but also kind of like says that, I at the end of the day didn't want to, show my superpower. Well, number one, how they frame it is that I have a superpower. I've never claimed to have a superpower. I mean, again, this sells newspapers.
Yeah.
So the journalist, Corinne Pertel, I talked to her separately, and then she put a little disclaimer in, and then she had to correct some mistakes. I said, this isn't very good journalism. You write for the New York Times, you write for 10 Medium, you write Quartz. She writes for all these publications, and she's a respected journalist. But she got the simple things wrong, like where I lived, which ear was being affected, and then I had to really push about the disclaimer about my family having a house fire, and she's like, I'm not going to do that. And I said, but you're not putting context in this. It makes it sound like I don't have this ability. And I said, number one, I never even claimed to have a superpower. I said, so how you're framing the narrative. So ended up being quite an argument, but that is out there. Yes, I got some press from it, but it's not all accurate. And I'm still, like I said, they know how I feel about them not mentioning the existential crisis with our family, my family having a house fire. And that was right before the test, right before the election too. So this all played out like in the week and a half before the presidential election. And that was the thing. Some of the testers, some of the CFI group, I can name the person, James Underdown, the head of the whole organization. He was offended that he's a very much an elitist skeptic, that I was making such preposterous claims, because to him, he's an atheist too. There is no God, there is no aliens. This is all figment. And he told me, that I needed to get help. And then, I'm a flake. And I'm like, wait, dude, I said, why are we even indulging this if you don't want to, get to the bottom of the phenomenon I'm describing? But they're aware that I said I'm going to be doing podcasts, and I'm going to not put them in the most positive light because they're not fair and balanced. It's a disparaging article. Like I said, I can share that with you as well. But I've got also other press that's been, balanced and fair, and including reviews of my film. So, I look at the big picture. I'm not going to be able to convince everybody. There are people out there who, no matter what, even if the data is incontrovertible, they're still not going to believe it. They're going to say this has got to be something else.
Well, okay, so I have a whole book about this, and it's a long and drawn out thing, but it's how the media works. Gary, they don't care that you have this contact with other people. They want to sell papers by saying that Gary Arnold is a freak, and that he makes these claims. And why did they have to tailor your experience around what they think is legitimate? Their only purpose, as far as I'm concerned,
I agree with you.
A circus freak and dismiss you and say there's nothing to it. He'll never get his 250,000, and that's the end of it. So.
Yeah, and what they did, the article, again, you should read it. It's called Hex Factor. You can look it up. And the article juxtaposes, they alternate paragraphs about my experience, and then they have references to climate change deniers, conspiracy groups. They make it guilty by association. Somehow I almost expected by the end of the article that I would be labeled a QAnon sympathizer. And I'm like, you guys, it's crazy. And that's the way it's done. It's so manipulative, so disparaging, so intellectually dishonest. But that's what it is. They have the power once they put it out there. It's like, getting them to even correct the smallest of things, all right, is almost impossible. And like I said, I gave them contact information for the doctors so they could verify my medical records. But in the article, 10 could not independently verify this. And I hammered him. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I gave you well, we didn't really look into it. I said, so you put that in there to, again, diminish my credibility. It's a manipulation. It's, in a way, it's disparaging, and it's inaccurate. It's a lie. And it's to create their narrative versus the truth. The truth is, hey, I gave you my doctor's information up front, including his extension. He was expecting you to call, and yet you didn't even do that.
Well, now that's the story I expected to hear when you talked about the media. I was surprised it took that long to get that out, but they really produce things, and it's basically uneducated people talking to more uneducated people, but they're really big on this superpower thing, and it's really written to the 5th grade.
It is.
Anyway, I personally would not deal with them unless I had to. Anyway, so let's get back to your interaction with these entities. So they're different people. Are they from different places?
I don't know that. And I'm open-minded enough to believe that there could be, hear me out, there could be one entity that is able to play these games, to pretend, and again, we don't know what by design, what the goal is, to pretend to be female or a child, as much as they pretend to sound like an animal like the frog or the rabbit or a pig. They do that quite well. So is it just one being that says, hey, I'm going to pretend to be a little boy and call him daddy. I'm going to pretend to be a female saying his wife's name, or a male that has an African inflection, or my wife's Germanic, the female sounds German. Is it a game? So maybe it's just one entity. It could be like a microscopic flea, even like a piece of dust that has the sentience or the ability to be like a ventriloquist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be as open-minded about this, saying, are they otherworldly? I don't know. I have the recording that says that they're otherworldly. I asked them, are you this, or where are you, right? And then they answer that we're all together, right? All together. Well, does that mean in the same place? There are different interpretations. What they do is they rarely use more than a few words, all right? Usually it's 1 to 2 word answers, sometimes a few, like they will all be dead, or they don't do that, or they don't know, as far as, I mean, but they never give me like a conversation like we're having, all right? So the process of interacting with them, and I only give them a small slice of my life, because, I'm thinking, hey, I do have a wife, kids, a job, other interests. So I try to give them a small bit every day that they can interact with me. But believe me, they're greedy. They want more. They awaken me at night. The ear ringing and stuff. And I've not just had the brain scans, but I've gone to the ENT, the ear, nose, and throat specialist. I have, for whatever reason, my right ear is exceptional. The range you can hear, they don't understand that. But there's no alien implant. There's nothing that physically shouldn't be there. There's no brain tumor. I don't have any kind of psychosis, or there's nothing. There's no schizophrenia, no history, no evidence of any of it. Like I said, I've never been healthier, really, when it comes to physically and emotionally. But this is something. The only way I'm able to function is by compartmentalization. I allow it a small space of my life. Like I said, I'm respected here. I'm doing this from work at the university, and I work with the students. This is something that the grassroots up approach. I want people like your organization, everybody, to step by step say, okay, let's look at what he's saying, because this is a group effort. It's not just me. I've been told by the entities they number one, they want the recognition. They want people to know they exist. I compare myself a couple times in interviews to Dr. Seuss's Horton Hears a Who. I'm the elephant who hears to the rest of the world invisible who in Whoville, and at the end is vindicated, because everybody's skeptical. Well, it's in your mind. These aren't real. A little speck of dust. So I don't know. I'm just trying to elevate the conversation, to say I've got the time-stamped evidence. I'm willing to share with anyone. And not everybody's going to get it. Some people are going to dismiss it outright, saying that's impossible. But for whatever reason, I mean, some of the people that I've interacted with, they've confirmed it, if anything, including some remote viewing. But do I know that these creatures, or whatever you want to call them, are aliens for real? I don't know that, but I do know that they have a sense of humor.
Mm. All right, so let me see if I have this straight.
Okay.
You're working at this college. I don't know what a TC. What is that? That's a community college, right?
No, it's HBCU. It's a historically black university and colleges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not naming it on purpose, because that's kind of the deal I have here. I can do this exploration, and you won't find any reference to where I work in any of the interviews I've had.
Yeah, and that's not important. But so you are working there, and what happens is it's like a phone ringing, right? Something in your ear.
It's like it has a signal coded component to it. It sounds like almost like very high pitched modem, I'm not saying, you remember the old modems, like it has a almost insect, like if you ever hear a mosquito flying around, that whine that it makes, well, this has that same extreme high frequency.
Okay. So I'm going to cut the subject for 1 second here.
Mhm.
And I don't really like people who talk about themselves, especially on podcasts. When I was in college, I had just graduated and I was managing this bar in Pullman, Washington, and it was closed. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I was turning everything off, and I got that same thing. I got something, and so I'm standing like on the dance floor. I'm turning off the little music machine thing, and something just whizzes by my ear, and I thought somebody had stayed behind and was trying to scare me in the dark and all that. And I turn around, oh, who the is it? Who the is here? Who's in here? And then the thing that really scared me was when I turned around, I expected to see somebody standing there, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
So a few days later, I talked to this guy that was he was the manager before I was, and I said, "Has anything weird ever happened here?" And he said, "Oh yeah, Rusty, the guy who the bar was named after, he died in the bar, and he's still here." And
Wow.
I didn't say anything, right? So I'm not trying to say that that's like your experience does not sound poltergeist. Like
Mhm.
people would say, oh, he's having a poltergeist experience. It doesn't sound the same, but I know that. I know what you're talking about because it's like, yeah, somebody's right there and you don't, and you're like, what is this? But
Yeah.
you heard that and then you heard the voices.
Yes. Now, let me qualify that. I've never heard with my own ears
Yeah.
voices. The recordings
Mhm.
allow the translation.
Okay.
What I hear, that high pitched noise, when
Yeah.
it's translated by the voice recorder, it becomes audible speech.
Okay.
So so I'm never hearing voices, like on my own. I mean, there's not.
Okay.
It needs a translation.
Okay. Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out. So are you familiar with how how they send Morse code speed
Yep.
code?
Yep. My dad used to do that because he was a ham radio operator, so he would
Uh-huh.
do that from his service days.
Okay. So from, and trying to get into like, well, what is the scientific, what are the applications here? So you have something in your ear that's like a frequency, right?
Correct.
Have you ever heard those transmissions, those really fast Morse code transmissions?
I have actually.
Are they
and,
similar at all?
yes, on one level. I mean, I've heard them when I used to have a radio back in the 80s, and military bases, they would actually send this kind of high speed code, Morse code between each other, and you would hear it like in bursts. So there's a similarity there. And again, this can open up a whole bunch of possibilities as well. I mean, one person, a researcher, I'm not going to name this person, is in the aerospace industry, and there is some talk of satellites perhaps being used to certain frequencies to affect people's actions. And was there a capability where an individual could be targeted? And I've done, like I said, I've not done anything. I mean, I wouldn't think, and I've tried again to escape the idea, a Faraday cage, something that these signals couldn't get through if let's say the satellite was involved it would be a frightening thing to think that on some level, maybe some group or military group or, black ops, whatever, is using people as guinea pigs, with some kind of frequency. Not impossible.
Right.
And some would say that's more likely than ethereal beings, or so they would say maybe this is some kind of black project. I don't know. My contacts that I've had that have the high level security clearance, the people I rely on, some of their expertise, say that doesn't exist to their knowledge. Not that there haven't been attempts made to make sonic weapons. Obviously, a few years ago, you had that where in Cuba, American diplomats were being affected by some kind of, they think, sonic or microwave beaming. Perhaps the most likely candidate, they said, was the Russians, and it was it was in the news. All right, these people were suffering audio hallucinations because of, and even brain damage. Their brain, they did some MRIs and stuff, and their brains were affected, traumatized by whatever was happening down in Cuba. I think it was at the embassy, so you can look that up. But strangely enough, that's almost the same time. It was about 2 months prior to my first encounter with this interaction in the library, that was in the news. It was 2017, I believe, in October, and mine happened in December. So coincidence, probably. I don't think that I've been targeted. I'm a nobody, really, so I can't see why anybody would want to use some kind of ultrasonic device or beamed. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. And because first of all, it wouldn't, for them to be able to tell you what your question was before you asked it.
Yeah.
Well, if you follow the Joe McMonagals and the Courtney Browns, then they would have had to have somebody remote view you before they did this.
Yes.
And, you know.
Yeah, I follow Occam's razor. You know,
yeah, exactly.
The least complicated. The least complicated is usually the right answer.
Okay. So let me tell you another story that you may not be familiar with, but are you familiar with John Vivanco? He's a remote viewer.
No.
Okay. So he tells the story of they were tasked for, like, by government agencies or corporations, whatever, to do remote viewing, and they were remote viewing something. And he got something that showed up at, like he said, I think it showed up in his like room or something at night. And he said it looked like it was a weird being. It had like footballs or balls or something hanging from it. And it said, "We live in the signal." And I don't remember the story exactly, but it told him we live in the signal. Right? So you're sitting here telling me that you're getting communications from a white noise that is only at like a certain frequency, I guess, whatever. Well, I think you need to look into that because it might be the same things. And then the other thing that I have to say is that, are you writing this stuff down? Are you keeping track of this?
You mean, do I keep a log? No, I don't have a journal or anything. I mean, I do the recordings, usually daily, and the sessions when I have an opportunity. I keep everything's time-stamped, unmanipulated, raw, all right? Because I want it to be authentic and genuine. So then I can send these clips to other investigators, and I'm not going to name those people yet. They bounce back, and I don't tell them what they're supposed to hear. They bounce back their analysis, or forensic analysis. And we interact. I've named a couple people like Bigelow Aerospace, Robert Bigelow's group. But yeah, so some of these people, their expertise, and they basically validate what I'm sharing as legitimate. Interpretation and stuff, I don't know if they're sharing it with any, like the CIA or somebody else. I'm sure some of my claims are outrageous enough. Maybe I'm on somebody's list. But another reason to go public with stuff is to say, hey, this shouldn't be something that just a select few people can talk about and everybody else is in the dark. I'm trying to say this phenomenon is so out there, but it's relevant. If we can conclusively, incontrovertibly demonstrate that these voices exist, this shouldn't be there, it throws our current paradigm into obsolescence. So we have something new that we have to work with, and then come to a new understanding of, well, are these interactions, is there an adversarial relationship? Is there something that is supportive? And And is it possible to have a common denominator? Maybe it's humor, like I was referring to build on, so that we can get a larger and larger understanding of who they are and the realm they inhabit. I don't know. I mean, I just so much is beyond my pay grade. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a simple guy with simple pleasures. I enjoy eating, enjoy the beach, enjoy the outdoors. This is just one little piece of my life, but it could be, if it's played right, it could be that years from now somebody will refer to me as like Kenneth Arnold, who was the one
Yeah.
who, Gary Arnold, no relation, but it could be that at least there will be some acknowledgement that, hey, yeah, this guy actually went out on a limb and confirmed what a lot of people suspected, that, hey, we're not alone. And whatever that means beyond that, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen unless, I mean, it's not going to happen through the mainstream media. It's going to happen through things like this and people getting together. But I really think, I'm not telling you how to live your life, but if you're getting these communications from some other place, I think it's kind of your responsibility to write them down or to keep track or record them or something. Because, let's take, for example, that you said, where they said that they're all together or we're all together.
Yep.
Well, if you think that the universe, basically we're all just connected to each other somehow, that's what they're saying. They're just saying, well, we're all together. I mean, there's no difference between you and us. So I really think that there's a lot of information that is in there that you're just getting, but you have so many things going on.
Yeah.
You can't really analyze, what does this mean? And the context of it. So let's take the sense of humor. A stupid person does not have a sense of humor, right? I mean, I'm not going to cite any examples, but a stupid person generally doesn't have a sense of humor. And so if you want to, let's say you meet somebody for the first time, and I think you talked about Robin Williams. Okay. Well, Robin Williams moved around a lot when he was a kid, and how he got popular was he made jokes, at his new school, whatever, he clowned around, and people liked him because he had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And maybe, and here's another thing that I talked about with, talking about Skinwalker Ranch, is the guy who all this stuff happened to. He has been described as having a type A personality. And talking to you, you seem like pretty much, you have a sense of humor, but you seem like a no nonsense kind of guy. I've got my limits,
Yeah, it's true.
And so, Mantra kind of made this, she alluded to this, that they pick out a certain personality. And maybe you came in there, they liked you. You probably do have a sense of humor. So they said, well, this is somebody that we can kind of relate to, and he can relate to us. So maybe they picked you for that reason.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, again, it's too easy though to fall into the I'm special. I've been chosen. I think throughout history, there's a danger in people suddenly believing that they're the one.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think there's a sense of humor I can appreciate. If anything, that these interactions have at times had me laughing. That to think that, okay, I'm getting something this funny, this profound from the ether. It can be something that enriches my life. To think that, okay, there is a universal quality of an appreciation of humor, and something that transcends maybe even dimensions, space and time. Yeah, and that's what, again, I think my story's different enough when it comes to that. I don't think you're going to find other people talking about ethereal entities or ghosts talking about flatulence. Right? And yet I want it to be unfiltered, so that I'm not sitting here and having to say, I should never mention this, that makes me look stupid. No, because people need to know the truth. The truth is, whatever these things are, there is that element that if they can, you hit something I never even thought about, the language they chose to describe passing gas, farting. to describe it, a stinker, is a certain time frame in the 70s that, that's good. It's an insight it's an independent insight I never would have seen myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's other things too. I've talked to Ron Moorhead about his infrasounds from Bigfoot, and I don't remember where he sent his recordings to. He's got these sounds that he recorded up in the Sierras,
okay,
from Bigfoot.
Cool.
And I would really wonder if he talked about where he sent his stuff on my podcast, and it's probably on his website. But if you sent your recordings to those people and they found out that there was a similarity in like the frequency or
sure,
whatever. One thing that really, I mean, there's so many things that fascinate me, but when you said that you recorded it on this low budget recorder from back in the day, and then Google is able to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Then because Google only recognizes a voice, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So Google is recognizing that as a human voice, because otherwise it couldn't translate it.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, this is, of all the podcasts I've done, this is definitely probably the most fascinating. I don't want to say the most fascinating and offend anybody.
No, I hear you.
But wow.
I'm glad to be able to share it, and with you first. I mean, you're the one. You have an exclusive, and it just, people need to know. People need to know it's not about me. It's about the phenomenon, and the phenomenon is mischievous and it's mysterious, and it's I could go on and on, because again, my background in writing and stuff, and throw all the adjectives out there. But the fact of the matter is, hey, it exists, and that's what we got to look at. Everything else can be a sidelight, but because it exists, this changes things. This changes everything, and that's why I believe it's important to share that with everyone, to say, hey, prove me wrong. I'm inviting all the debunkers, anyone who wants to, check this out. I mean, explain this away, because this doesn't make any sense to me, how these beings can be telepathic, can answer my questions before I even ask them, and not in a general way, but specifically addressing, if I'm asking about pigeons and selling them, and then you have a voice that tells me to sell them beforehand, and a voice that has already been analyzed. It's not my voice. I'm not playing games here. That it's formulated in a way out of white noise that's not like human speech, phoneme by phoneme, and then you have the quality of humor, of pretending to be caricatures of animals when they reference the answers about an animal. It's out there. It's totally bizarre.
Yep. And it's like a child.
Yes, right? Yes, there is that. Yes.
So yeah, this is so fascinating. Gary, I'm not going to keep you, because I could keep you here for hours.
I know.
Don't talk about anything. You know about the Tic Tac UFOs and
yes, all that. Yeah, I follow that stuff. Yeah,
we're going to have you back as soon as possible. But
please do.
But this is so fascinating. So just to reiterate what you've told me, you first got contacted by, and I didn't even get a chance to talk about, I mean, your kids must love that. I mean, the kids at that school, they must love that. So,
they do and they don't.
Really?
It is one of those things, we've learned to live with it. We don't make decisions based on advice from the ether. For the most part, we live our lives, and maybe we're obstinate, but like, hey, we're not going to, I did get the blood work that the entities told me to. It was all clear. So I'm like, okay, well, that just is confirmation that I feel like I'm healthy. But, it says, get the blood work, and it was nice and clear. And the doctor agreed. He says, well, this is the first time that I've ever, had advice as well from the invisible realm.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff, but it's all true, unvarnished truth. I'd be glad to come back anytime. I could talk for hours, believe me.
Okay. Well, I'd like to introduce you to a few people. So
sure.
After we finish, we'll talk for a second. But yeah, I'd really like to see the student side, because I'm a teacher myself, and I can't think of a better way to get the kids excited than to, oh yeah, there were some aliens or something around
Yeah.
our school. So we
Yeah,
better
they're here.
study. Yeah, they're watching us. So
Yeah,
great.
we're their entertainment, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that would be really exciting. I'm sure those kids just love it. I'm sure they love you. So, all right. Well, Gary, I'm gonna wrap this up because
All right.
as I said, I could just go on and on about this. But before we go, do you have? Okay, where do we see your video? What's the link?
All right. If I sent you the link.
Okay. Then if I
Yeah.
have it, then I'll just.
Yeah.
I mean, I have your website.
Right. And the website, it's embedded in there. It says, watch
Okay.
this movie. So there are arrows pointing to it. The movie's on Gumroad, right? Because it doesn't cost me an arm and a leg in fees. And unlike Vimeo and stuff where you pay a lot of money just to have your video out there professionally done. This is low key. It's on a single shoestring budget. This is about the phenomenon. It's not about special effects or anything.
Okay. And what about in the future? Do you have any other? Is anybody talking to you, William Shatner on Unexplained or anything like that?
No, I'm corresponding. I'm actually got a postcard from Josh Gates and his team. You're familiar with Josh Gates?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Expedition Unknown and stuff. And so, I mean, yeah. So working through the channels, again, it's one of those things where it takes time because it's so out there. And even if someone who's absolutely credible comes and tells me we're going to break this news to the world, but there's going to be such a reaction of disbelief and ridicule. And I am full well aware of ridicule. I expect it, and because it's so crazy and so out there. And most people, if the paradigm is going to change, there's going to be resistance. The old guard is not going to want things to change. Mm-hmm. But, I'm like I said, I'm putting it out there unvarnished that we are not alone. That's what I'm bringing to the table. These voices can't be explained through traditional science or any understanding of it. They are sentient. They interact in live time, real time. We can live stream that. We can do anything. We can have an interactive session where I actually have other people witnessing me make contact. Call it what you will. I'm open to all of it. So.
Okay. Well, this has just been amazing. So yeah, I know a couple of people that want to talk to you. So
all right.
Talk about that. But for everybody out there, I just want to thank Gary Arnold for being on the show. This has just been fantastic. I really was planning on talking about this and going into Tic Tac UFOs, but this turned out to be so fascinating. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And please go ahead and look at Gary's website. And let me just throw that back at you. It is wearenotalonegaryarnold.com.
Yeah, that's it's on Medium. So We're Not Alone, Gary Arnold, and you could look up Medium. That's like the format.
Okay. I have never even heard of that before, but yeah, check that out. Just go to Gary's I'll just go to We Are Not Alone, Gary Arnold. That should take you far enough.
Yep.
So anyway, well, thank you for being on the Encounters USA, Gary.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. So before you go, Gary, for everybody out there and you, if you're around Gary's neck of the woods in Pennsylvania or anywhere, always watch your back. Here, just want to remind you, if you like this kind of content, subscribe to this channel, whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. Also, go to encountersusa.com for more videos and podcasts, all archived for your convenience. Also, we have a wonderful Encounters USA blog, as well as an Encounters USA paranormal shop for all of your paranormal apparel. So, not only can you watch your back, you can put some of our designs on yours as well. So we'll see you on down the road on Encounters USA. right. And that is a wrap, sir.
Thank you.
How fascinating. So anyway, do you know Carrie Cassidy?
I don't.
Yeah, Project Camelot. Have you ever heard of her?
Nope.
Oh, well, she's been doing this for years, and she does all
Sweet.
these whistleblowers. So I'm going to pass your name along to her. She'll want to talk to you.
Fantastic. I talk to anybody, believe me.
And she has like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, not like me.
Sweet.
So
Sweet.
yeah, she's
The
really
news,
fun to talk to.
I want to get it out there because I think it's a story, it's a truth that needs to be heard. And it's crazy, but if it's true, hey, we can't hide it. Got to be transparent.
Yeah. Well, I want to listen to the recordings, and then yeah, I'll get back to you. But
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, Gary. Thanks for your time.
You have a good day.
Have a super day, you too. Bye.
Thank you.